All right, welcome everyone. We're going to do a quick recap where we left off last week with the first presentation. We talked about nutrition. So, with nutrition, we covered some topics to make nutrition a little bit more simplified. So, we know with nutrition, it can be very complicated with information and potentially disinformation. So, we want to try to simplify it as much as we can. So, we talked about our macronutrients being protein, carbohydrates, and fats, and how we can start to create a personalized guide to get enough in for yourselves with each meal. So, using your hand as a guide, palm for protein, fist for vegetables, a cupped hand for carbs, and thumb for fats. Starting to aim for our plates to look like this one here on the right. So prioritizing vegetables, quarter of the plate being reserved for protein, and healthy fats in nuts, seeds, oils, things along those lines. Couple we'll continue on. So with the guidelines, just a couple easier ways to choose what you're going to actually buy at the grocery store. So these are some rules you could follow. So number one, so eat it if it's an animal protein, obviously, unless you're a vegan or vegetarian. Eat it if it's a leafy green vegetable. The darker, the better, more micronutrients and minerals. And number three, eat it if it is a single ingredient food. If we can stick to those three things, we will simplify what we put in our bodies pretty much every time. Things that we can look at avoiding, things like gluten, grains, refined sugars, and dairy are generally highly inflammatory for the body. And we may not recognize that because we've been consuming it for a long period of time. So taking it out for a short period of time, gradually adding it back in and seeing how the body actually reacts to it, and avoiding multiple ingredient foods or sauces where we sneak in a lot of low value items. So between the two of things that you should do and things that we can avoid, we will really have a clean palette of food that we're eating on a regular basis. After that, we touched on body types. So this being a bit of a spectrum and not definite. Like we may have a variety, or we may fall between body types. So I type, V type, and O type. We can make small adjustments with the food that we are consuming to sort of get as much out of our nutrition as we can to perform or lose weight or gain weight or whatever it is we're trying to do. After that, we talked about using nutrition tracking as a tool. So it's not something that we should need to do forever, unless it just becomes a habit for you and you enjoy that. But the goal with it is to educate. It's to make sure that we're getting enough quantity for your body's need. It's to dial in the quality of the food and to show the impact of low quality foods. The goal with tracking is not to become obsessive or take a lot of time out of your day. After this, we talked just about some pantry staples, some good things to have on hand so that you could be successful with whatever recipes you decide to use. But a good mix of healthy fats, proteins, carbs, and some substitutes if we're trying to do the, eliminating some of the other foods that we talked about earlier. We finished off here, and so I wanted to pick up with the idea of supplementation and why and when we do that. So I kind of make a note here just to not get caught up in the supplement hype. Generally, supplements are fairly expensive. And if we're doing the other lifestyle things and improving on them, then we shouldn't need to add those in right away. So if you're getting enough sleep, water, food, and exercise, there should be little to no reason to supplement. The best way to know exactly what your body needs is to do something like a blood screening to make sure that we're not just, doubling down on things that we don't actually need and getting the right amounts of things we actually do need. So just to touch on supplements a little bit more so we have just some more knowledge about that. So supplements are generally used to replace or add to someone's daily routine in order to achieve the desired amount of intake for whatever they are supplementing. So an example of this is very common is protein powder. So if someone is unable to eat the desired amount of protein through food sources, they may choose to take a protein supplement, usually in the form of a powder mixed with water. So just numbers example of that, if we wanted to eat 100 grams of protein in a day and we were only able to hit 75 grams through food, then we would want to add a scoop of protein that would give us that remaining 25%. Supplements may be used to increase the potential production of naturally occurring hormones, chemicals that could lead to better health or performance. A really common example of this is creatine. So it's something that occurs naturally in the body, but is typically taken by athletes to buffer natural production in order to never completely deplete natural stores. So we're adding a little bit to our daily diet in order so that when we're competing in our sports or whatever or training, that we never fully run out of it. There's been some really cool research that has come out recently on creatine and how it does help improve brain function as well. Another really common example would be testosterone. So this might be more, for someone who is older or someone who is not playing within the rules of sports, but it occurs naturally in the body. Same idea. Levels of testosterone depend on many factors, and some individuals may choose to take testosterone to boost levels in the body in such procedures as testosterone replacement therapy. So there are obviously really good times to be doing this. People who I've known who have used testosterone replacement therapy have seen amazing results in their, the health of their day-to-day life. Where this gets abused is, generally you see that in sports and strength sports, and where strength and aggression is a benefit. So the reason I approach health and nutrition holistically before suggesting supplements is because we can get most of what we need from natural sources. So you also must be careful about what other ingredients are in supplements. So we are pretty lucky in Canada that a lot of our testing is third party, and it's pretty stringent. So what you see on the back, like on the label of a product, is generally what you're going to get. Sometimes we may have a product that is sold to us to, being one thing. And when we actually look at the label, there are other ingredients hiding in it. So an extreme example of this is out of the US, but I always, tell people about this, is that there was a protein product on a shelf. It had been there for a few years. They got around to testing that out. It was claiming, it was 30 grams of protein and 5 grams of carbohydrates. And when they actually tested it, they saw that that was inverted. So it was actually 5 grams of carbs, 5 grams of protein, sorry, and 30 grams of carbs, which may throw off the tracking if, that's something that we are paying attention to, and you're getting significantly more carbohydrates than protein. And, then it becomes a bit of a problem. So we're pretty lucky in Canada that these products are generally, they are what they say they are. If you're in the US or somewhere else, it's something to look into and do a bit more research and make sure that those products are quality. Okay, a couple rules to live by around nutrition as well, just to wrap off this section for now. So keeping it simple. So if we get one thing out of this, I hope that we can simplify the information out there pertaining to food and nutrition. So food doesn't need to be boring or bland in order to be healthy. This is a big thing. I think a lot of people associate healthy food with really boring, bland options, like the boiled chicken and broccoli version of food. And it doesn't have to be, right? We can, once we start to understand the food in general and how it fits into our lives, and the amounts of food and the quality of food that we need to be healthy, we can start to figure out the best ways to cook our food and prepare our food so that it's still enjoyable, right? A lot of us on this call are not necessarily here to be Olympic athletes, and we don't necessarily have to sacrifice everything in order to get results. So if we can find good recipes that work, within our macros that we're trying to hit for whatever our goals are, there are great ways to use seasonings and things like that to make food still taste really quite good. Second one here is don't get overwhelmed. So we don't want to make food stressful. Remember, more stress doesn't help. So if we're now creating stress around the food and obsessing over numbers and things like that, that is not going to benefit us. So the more we learn about food, the less stress we should have with it, and the better we can, manage external stress and not add more to that day to day. So every day, just work on making good choices. And if it goes off the rails, you can always start fresh the next day, right? If things get really bad and you got behind your schedule and you didn't have food prepared, whatever it is, don't panic. Just reset the next day. Start with a glass of water as soon as you get up in the morning and go from there. Next thing here, 80-20 rule. So we can focus on eating well 80% of the time. So that means if we can get, uh, if we're eating 3 meals a day, so about 21 meals in the week, that leaves 4 meals in the week that may be what I like to call kind of like off menu. So they may not be perfectly aligned with your goals, may not be perfectly aligned with your macronutrients, but if you're getting just 4 meals out of the week that are off menu, you're not going to have a detrimental or derail your progress. Um, this, I think, helps put things in perspective for us, and we can relax a little bit more around trying to be perfect. That's never the solution. But if we try to eat most of our meals on menu, air quotes, and reduce to 4 meals that are off menu, we'll still see a lot of great success. And then with eating out, so if you're going to restaurants, there are a couple different options here. So if you're eating at a restaurant and you're choosing to stick to your 80%, like those meals that are on menu, we want to look for items on the menu that are close to whole food and minimize sauces where we can. So, good example, most restaurants will have some version of this, either like a beef, a chicken, or a fish option. And most restaurants will also do, a side of vegetables, anything that has a sauce on it. You can always ask for that sauce on the side, substitute where you need to. That's if you're sticking to the 80. Now, it may be that that meal out, it falls into one of your 4 meals in the week that are off menu. And in this scenario, we just want to be moderate with what we're eating. Like, we don't want to go crazy, obviously, and order everything on the menu, but this may be one of your 4 meals in the week that you're deciding this is where I'm going to just really get what I want and enjoy it and go from there. And so, with that in moderation, it may be like the alcohol that if you're having that served, you may just reduce that to one. Um, you may still choose to have water with that and still eat the things that you want. So there's flexibility and there's options around eating out. We just have to take a look at that and see how it's going to fit into the greater scheme of our life and our lifestyle. Okay, from here, unless anyone has any questions about those things, we will move on to the next section talking about sleep. So, sleep may be one of the most overlooked recovery tools, but it is our main means of recovery. So, benefits of quality sleep include from workout recovery, it will help us improve soreness, fatigue, muscle damage. All of that will be repaired while we sleep. It will improve hormone regulation. So, sleep quality and consistency helps regulate levels of hormone release and sensitivity. It will help with hunger management. So, sleep regulates something called ghrelin, which we'll talk a little bit more later, which is a substance in the brain that affects our hunger, satiated messaging. And poor sleep will equal too much ghrelin equals more hunger equals overeating. So you can see how that becomes, a bit of a negative cycle. It will also help improve mood.
What did it say?
Sleep, we will have better manage our emotions and cognitive function. So the brain's ability to retain information rises dramatically in someone who's sleeping 8 hours versus someone who's sleeping 5 hours every night. So just a couple terms that will be helpful when we talk about sleep. So circadian rhythm are 24-hour cycles that are part of the body's internal clock, running in the background to carry out essential functions and processes. One of the most important and well-known circadian rhythms is the sleep-wake cycle. So if you've heard that before, it's from the time that we go to sleep to the time we wake up, and then the time that we are awake until we go to sleep again is our natural circadian rhythm. Each person's circadian rhythm is individualized. So it doesn't mean that everyone is going to, get tired, fall asleep at the same time. Everyone is a little bit different, and it actually adjusts as we go through different periods in our life. So, the classic, tale of teenagers who want to sleep in until 11 or noon every day. That's actually because their circadian rhythm is shifting. The same way when someone is more elderly who wants to wake up earlier in the day and go to sleep earlier, their circadian rhythm has shifted to a different cycle. Sleep hygiene is something we'll talk a bit more about as well. So, practicing and eliminating habits and environmental factors that may impact the quality of your sleep for better or worse. So, we'll talk about how we can improve that. And then the sleep cycle, I thought this was pretty interesting to know. Like when you're going to sleep, what are all the stages that we go through? So, drowsy sleep will typically, or drowsy period will typically last about 5 to 10 minutes. Light sleep totals 20 minutes. Moderate sleep is about 50% of our total sleep time. Deep sleep lasts about 30 minutes. And then rapid eye movement is ideally sort of the remaining time there. And then ghrelin. So we're getting that term again. So ghrelin reduces energy expenditure, it stimulates hunger and intake, it promotes retention of fat, and increases hepatic glucose production to support the availability of fuel to glucose dependent tissues. So, this is not really a good thing. And it is, we get more of it when we stay up later or we have consistently bad sleep. So, you can think about all these things are not really, healthy. Healthy things for the body. So that this is kind of where the science and why we have these windows of time that we're trying to hit, 6 to 8 hours. This is one of the big things that gets reduced when we get enough quality sleep. So skip ahead there. Sorry. Yeah, perfect. So this is a study that came out of the University of Chicago, and I just wanted to share this because I think it kind of puts those, that information, puts an image on that information. So when sleep is restricted, and we produce higher levels of ghrelin, which triggers more hunger. So cutting sleep reduces fat loss by up to 55%. So this is a study that they did. They restricted everyone's calories to about 90% of their maintenance, so just under what they would need, and this would generally promote weight loss. So it was a 14-day study. There was a group that did 8.5 hours of sleep and a group that had 5.5 hours of sleep. So the average weight loss for the 8.5 hour group was 6.6 pounds. And the average loss for the 5.5 hour group was 1.3 pounds. So, pretty significant difference there. The only thing that changed was how much sleep they had, a 3 hour difference. So, we could see how the quality and the length of sleep is really important. So, with that kind of base of information, now we want to sort of talk about how we can start to make adjustments for that, like starting as early as tonight. These are some things that you guys can start to do to help improve the quality of your sleep and the consistency of it as well. So, uh, talking about the circadian rhythm is going to sleep and waking up at the same time each day. And generally we'll say like this includes the weekends too. This is usually where we get off schedule. And that's why Mondays feel like Mondays, because if we've had several nights in a row of off routine sleep, that has a big effect on when we're that first day that we're trying to get back on schedule. So the more consistently we can get to sleep every night and wake up every day will help dial in on that circadian rhythm to make sure that our body starts to recognize the signals it needs to get to bed and to wake up feeling energized the following day. So what we want to do is we want to create a routine. And I have a young guy, so this is now like sort of being reintroduced, right? The better you are with their routine, generally speaking, the better they fall asleep, stay asleep. So this is something we kind of get away from as we become adults. We have free reign and we watch TV as long as we want, stay out as late as we want, but we really fall away from a routine. So here are some ideas that we can start to think about and ways to trigger or tell our body that it's time for sleep. So these are going to seem really familiar, especially if we have that idea of like, a child's routine before bed. So about 45 minutes before you want to fall asleep. So, this means like if you want to fall asleep at 10 o'clock, this routine needs to start at 9:15. So turning off screens. This is the most common one, and from what I've seen with clients, has had the greatest impact. So turning off phones, tablets, TVs, even some e-readers that have a brighter blue light screen, starting to get those turned off earlier will start to help signal to the brain that we're shutting things down. And I've even gone as far, or it may seem as far or extreme, to leave your cell phone out of the bedroom. That has had the biggest impact for most of my clients who are struggling with sleep. Number two here is stop eating and drinking that 45-minute mark before bed. So if we're waking up to go to the bathroom throughout the night, or we're waking up, or trying to digest too much as we're going to sleep, these are going to affect how well we are sleeping. Number three, reduce temperature in the bedroom. If you have access to a thermostat in your bedroom, we want to aim for about 20 degrees or less in the bedroom. We want to kind of establish basically the feeling of a cave, dark, cool space that we're going to really fall asleep in. Eliminating ambient light and noise. So you may have devices in your room that emit even the smallest light is a signal to the brain that we're not ready to go to sleep yet, or there's no need to go to sleep yet because it's still daytime. So any of those, you can do a bit of an audit when you go to bed tonight, turn off your lights, look around, see if there's anything that's emitting extra light or making noise, like a clock ticking or something like that may have a big impact on how quickly you fall asleep. Stretching before bed is a good signal to tell your body that it's time to shut down. We're sending it into a parasympathetic state that is going to reduce how much energy we're expending, and it's going to allow the body to start to shift into that recovery mode. And then one other thing I've found pretty effective is reading something physical before bed. So reading like a book or a magazine, not necessarily an e-reader. Sometimes that works for people, but I've found like if you're reading a physical book, that generally has the best impact for falling asleep. I'm not exactly sure what that is, whether it's just like maybe we're reading boring things before bed and that just is really lulling you to sleep. It may be just that inherent routine of, when you're a kid, parents read you a book and that helps signal to fall asleep. And I have a bit of a theory that it's also just like your brain has a capacity for information intake, and reading before bed may just help cap that off and put you into, a recovery or information retention state. And I think that's all I've got for sleep for right now. But as I mentioned, it has a big effect on how we can perform in following days, and it is a good area to start making some of these adjustments. So I will stop sharing here and I will stop recording.